Hello guys, welcome back to the show. So I promised I was going to do a tutorial on Pytest fixtures and explain what Pytest fixtures are, what they are used for, and how you could use them in your test. Pytest fixtures are functions that are run by Pytest before and sometimes after the actual test functions. The code in the fixture can do whatever you want it to. You can use fixtures to get data sets for the test to work on. You can use fixtures to get a system into a known state before running a test. Fixtures can also be used to get data ready for multiple tests. That's what Pytest fixtures are. And I'm going to show you how to use them by creating a little example to explain how fixtures work. So I've gone on to create a simple class called name. It does nothing major. It just adds a name to a list. It removes a name from a list, and then it prints out the name which has been removed from the list. And using this, I will try and explain Pytest fixtures using the most simple words that I know to make you understand how fixtures work. So let's go on to write a test for this function. Like I said earlier on, like fixtures are functions that are run by Pytest before and sometimes after an actual test function. Okay, and there are ways to write these Pytest fixtures. You can decide to write a Pytest fixture inside of a conf.txt file, right? If you want to share the fixture across multiple test functions, or if you want to use the fixture inside of just one module, which is inside of, for instance, this test underscore name.py file, you can decide to declare your fixture inside of this file. But I will show you how to do both, how to declare a fixture inside of a test file and how to declare a fixture inside of a conf.txt file. Okay, so let me create a fixture inside of this one. So I'll do a conftest.py. I'll create a conftest.py file, all right? So with a conf.txt file, with a conftest.py file, what you're saying is that you want to share the fixture among multiple test files, and from here the Pytest fixture can be shared among any test, any of your tests. Okay, so I would say import Pytest. So I'll say that from lib.names import name. Okay, and we create the Pytest fixture with the at Pytest.fixture decorator. That's how we create Pytest fixtures. So I would say at Pytest.fixture, which is a function, and underneath that I will create a method called name, and this method will create an instance of the name class. So I can say that new name is name. Then what I can do is that I can yield name. I know you're asking me, okay, what the hell is this? What is going on here? So with the Pytest official decorator, I'm telling Pytest that I want you to run this test before you run any of my test functions. Obviously, I haven't created any test function, but if I do create a test function inside of the test underscore name.py file, Pytest will run this first before it runs any test in here, okay? If I tell it to do so. That is what Pytest is doing. Over here, I create an instance of the class, which is normal. And I've got this yield thing over here, which is basically saying that at this point, at the yield point, it hands over to the test underscore name.py file, and then it runs the test. After the yield, right, anything that happens here happens after the test file. So basically, if I have like I will show you later on, so don't need to worry. So yield that, and basically when I create the instance, I just want to add something to it. All right, I've created a list over here. I want to add a name to the list, so I can say something like, I've created the instance. What I want you to do is that new name um, dot add. So new name, I've got an add method dot add a name, and the name that I want to add is Chris. Yeah, I've yield, And then lastly, I would like to say that new name dot remove. What do I want to remove? I want to remove Chris. Now stay with me. When I say new name dot add Chris, Pytest will add Chris to this list right here. All right. Then when it gets to yield new name, it will hand over to the test underscore names.py file. Okay. So I will over here I'll import Pytest as well. Then I will import name. Okay. What I'm going to do is to create a class called test name. For this class, I will create something like def. Is that this right here runs before each test, right? So I can pass this function right here. I can pass this function to my test because this test over here has a scope, has a functional scope. All right. I can pass this function, the name of this function, to this method over here. That's how I pass fixtures to functions in my test. So I can just say over here that name. Just bear in mind that this code over here will find what this name is. Okay. At this point, it hands over to this file. So it will find what this name is. So we can test and just see if everything is all right. What we can do is that we can check the length of the list. So what I can say is that assert what is the name of the list? List of name. Let's check the length. So length for name dot list of name is equal to 1, and we can check that it's actually Chris. So assert is definitely Chris. So I can run PyTest by saying PyTest. I can use the variables and then voila, passes. Okay, so if I show you, there's a command called pytest that setup the show. So as you can see over here, right, there is what is being run. It runs the setup. Okay, the setup is basically this one. Okay, so it runs whatever this is, the yield, whatever this is, the setup file. Okay, it runs that. It runs this. The F over here is saying that it has a functional scope. It's basically just like me saying that scope is function. So what a functional scope is that the fixture runs before and after each test. I can give it a class scope. I'll show you later. I can give it a class scope like that, which means it will run once per class. I can give it a session scope and I can give it a module scope. Um, but for now, just leave it as function. If you don't provide function, it's by default function. So that is fine. So it runs that, okay? And then it runs this actual method that I have in here, this actual method, and then it runs the teardown, which is this. It removes crates from the list. So that is a simple example of what Pytest fixture is inside of the conftest.py file. Okay, I could decide to have a fixture. If you saw the last two videos, I could decide to create a Pytest fixture over here. So at pytest.fixture, define name, and do the same thing over here and say that new name, return new name. I could have done the same thing over here, but had I done it inside of this module, inside of this file, the fixture could only be used or can only be used by, the methods inside of this file. So you can decide to do, whatever you want. It's just a matter of preference and what you're actually testing. But in this case, I've decided to set up and tear down inside of the conftest.py module. If I decide to use a class scope, let me just show you something. Let me show you one thing. Um, so let's create another method called test. I'll pass it the name fixture and I'll say name.add a name called Ben. Then I'll say the assert name dot list of name. Well, I would like to check the length, so I can say that len name dot list of name is equal to 2, right? Now, if I run the test right here, okay, it passes. Let me use, all right. So I have two tests right now, and they all pass because, again, the Pytest fixture has a functional scope. Now, if I change this here to a class scope, right? Obviously, I'm not adding anything over here. So if I do add one over here, say that name dot add or term. Let's call this term, right? So name dot add term. Now, when I run the test will fail because as you can see from the error given by Pytest, I'm expecting two names, which is Chris and Ben, right? Because Chris is inside of it here, and then I've got Ben over here, but it says that there are three names instead. This is because I've got a class scope right here, right? What the class scope is saying that let this fixture run once for the class. So it runs one for the class, and no matter how many times you call it, it runs just one. So if I do say 3 now, and I do change this to 2 because it will be Tam ending Chris. Now let's run the test, and the test will pass. Okay? Okay, let me change it back to function. Oops, if only I can spell. So function scope, let's change this back to 1. Let's change this back to 2. Let's see if everything works. Oops, something is wrong. Okay, I spelled something wrongly. Oh, FUNC. So, okay, this has to be 2 because I'm adding a new name over here. So that has to be 2. So that is in short how fixtures work. So Pytest comes with inbuilt fixtures. One of the most popular one is called capsys. So what this does is that it gives you the ability to get standard outputs and standard errors. So the outputs, the logs inside of your terminal, or the logs that um, Pytest brings out, and some of the errors that you do get as well. So what you can say is, for instance, I would like to find out what this is being printed as, like what this is. I would like to test that it's actually logging out the right thing in there in the terminal. So I'll call this out an error through the capsys dots. So the capsys has got like it's got read out error. It's called read out then error right here. I can assert that out will be so remove from the list Jeff, and that the error is empty. Let's see, hopefully. Okay, so something went wrong and I don't know what is wrong. Let's find out what went wrong. What is the error saying? It says that self the remove name value XS is not in list. It's saying that Jeff is not in list. Okay, so it makes a lot of sense because Jeff, I said, is capital J. That is why it's saying that X is not in list. So let's try again. Okay, so Jeff has been removed from the list. I've got like a small j over here, which has to be capital J. Sorry for that. Okay, so now the test is passing. So that is, sorry for that. That is an example of how you can get standard inputs. Well, you can get standard output or print statements. You can basically test print statements whilst running your test. In a general sense, this is what Pytest fixtures are. You can declare the fixtures inside of the conftest or py file. If you declare the fixtures in the conftest.py file, what you're telling Pytest is that you will want to share that fixture among all your test files. If you declare it inside of a module, it is used for just one test. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.